Hey guys, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home, and today we got two really cool 4K releases to check out from Blue Underground. Hey everyone, so thanks for coming back to the channel. Like I said, two really great releases from Blue Underground, who is an excellent indie horror distributor. They've been doing great work for years, and they sort of run a little bit underground compared to the Arrow videos and the Scream Factories of the world. They're a little bit lesser known. They tackle more cult movies, things that are a little bit less mainstream, but still some really popular titles. And today I've got both Maniac and Zombie to check out on 4K. I'm super excited to watch these and let you guys know all about them and talk a little bit about the history of these movies and the work that was done on these restorations and why it's so important for physical media. So first off, we'll take a look at Maniac on 4K. I actually do have Blue Underground's previous release here on Blu-ray. This was the 3-disc limited edition. These are now 2-disc special edition, so one 4K disc and one Blu-ray special features disc. The previous limited edition also had the soundtrack on the CD. You do not get that with the 4K, so that's something to consider. Maybe hold on to the CD, or maybe just hold on to this release and have both. That's what I did. But you know, there's a few things to consider there. Other than that, this release is pretty much the same. You don't get the lenticular slipcover, but everything is very similar. The discs are essentially the same. They have all the same special features, and everything is ported over from the previous Blu-ray. So I won't dive too much into packaging and special features because these are essentially identical. There are a few versions of Maniac you can get, but this is the only 4K version, and it does include all that great stuff from that special edition Blu-ray minus the CD soundtrack. Now, Maniac is a cult movie, one of what they called the video nasties in the UK. This movie was famously banned in many countries. It was not shown in a lot of theaters, and it's become sort of a cult classic over the years because of that. And so this movie, it was shot on 16 millimeter. And recently, back sometime in like 2016, they found a 16 millimeter print that was previously undiscovered, an original negative, and that's what they worked on the remaster for. And so in 2018, when they released this Blu-ray, this was a 4K remaster. And so now what they've done here is they've taken that excellent 4K remaster and put it on 4K disc, added new 16-bit 4K transfer, Dolby Vision HDR, and a new Dolby Atmos mix. So they recolor graded, they did some more sound and audio grading, and they did that new 4K transfer from the original negative and ported that over to this disc. And I have to say the picture here is excellent. For a 16 millimeter, you have to understand that it's going to be grain heavy compared to 35 millimeter because the shot has to be blown up a little bit. I was doing some research on the differences between 16 and 35, and that's what I saw was that grain is a little bit bigger because of that, because the image needs to be blown up. Now, this was taken from the original 16 millimeter camera negative, and so the grain is actually really well handled here. It looks like a movie from the 70s. It actually came out in 1980, but was shot, you know, late 70s. It has that look and feel, but the grain structure is really nice, and the 4K resolution definitely helps to smooth that out a little bit, and that's not a bad thing. You know, when we talk about grain, as you go up in resolution, it should become smoother and more detailed. It should be less obvious, and on this release it is. It's a little bit less obvious than the previous Blu-ray because of the added resolution and the added data that you can put on a 4K disc. These are both 100 gigabyte discs that they're using on each of the 4K transfers. The resolution was great, right? But it looked really good on the Blu-ray as well. Now, the one thing that I noticed was that HDR in this is a little muted. Like it doesn't have a huge, massive improvement, but colors are definitely nicer. And if you do have Dolby Vision, I noticed that that does give it a little extra pop. But the HDR here is really nice, and it's a great release. Now, is it worth upgrading because this just came out in 2018? So that's going to be a hard sell for some people. But this is a little bit cheaper. This is just, I'm seeing it at about $22 online, which is a good price, and a good price to support an indie studio, a smaller studio like Blue Underground, who's delivering these excellent cult movies. In the 4K transfer, I mean, this is as good as the movie's probably ever going to look. I can't see them ever doing like some sort of an 8K scan. The 4K scan of this is as good as it gets. In Blue Underground, they are masters of this stuff. They have some more 4K transfers coming out to 4K discs that were previously released on Blu-ray, which I'm excited about, but they really take their time and they know what they're doing with these tough older film negatives that really weren't cared for in the same way that, say, a Jaws or The Shining or anything of that kind of cultural significance. These film reels weren't cared for as much, and the amount of work and restoration they do is excellent. Now, that being said, it's also excellent on the Blu-ray. So is it worth upgrading? In my opinion, because I always want the best format, yes. But it is a bit of a hard sell. But here's something I can recommend. If you do have the previous Blu-ray, I would recommend selling it, or maybe keeping the CD if you want that, or buying the CD separately and selling this limited edition on eBay. There's lots of collectors out there, especially horror collectors who love this stuff, who haven't moved to 4K. You may be able to get $20 for this or more, and then use it to upgrade and essentially make it a straight swap. If you don't have the Blu-ray and you're jumping right to this is a great purchase for a horror fan. At $22, it's a steal. I really enjoyed it. Excellent transfer. In the audio, if the nice thing about this, audio-wise, Atmos track, right? But it also has a 5.1 DTS HD and a 2.0 DTS HD, while the previous had a 7.1 and a 2.0. And so if you do want to be a purist, you can go to the 2.0 track. You have the option of Atmos, and you also have the option of 5.1. Interesting that they went from 7.1 to 5.1 here, but there must have been a reason. They must have mixed it better, thought it sounded better on a 5 channel than a 7. And the Atmos track is really nice, and it has a classic horror soundtrack, and that's really what got the most use out of the Atmos. So overall, a very nice package from Blue Underground. Another great release from them, and a great first entry into 4K for them. I'm really excited to see what they have coming on the other stuff. Now, the next title is Zombie, and this is another one from Blue Underground, and this is a 4K re-release of a previously remastered Blu-ray. So just like Maniac, there was a Blu-ray that came out. There are different special editions that have CD, soundtracks, there's all kinds of things you could get. But this is just a 2-disc, has the 4K, has the Blu-ray with all the special features, and again, was redone in 4K with Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Now, I don't have the previous release of Zombie to compare this to, but I could look at some screenshots online, and this is a huge improvement in my opinion. Bigger than Maniac, probably because there's a better source. That's not a knock against Maniac, but Zombie has a much better source. It had a little bit better color at the time. The print looked better. It was probably shot better. There's multiple reasons why this looks better, and it's 35mm instead of 16mm. So there is a little bit more to work with. You don't have to blow that picture up at all. This again is from an original 35mm camera negative, which is what we want from our transfers. We want to take that original negative and put it right onto a disc with the transfer, and they did that. In Zombie, this movie blew me away when I put it in and viewed it on the projector. I viewed it on both the projector and on the TV with Dolby Vision to get both experiences, but I liked the projector better because it was a larger image, and this is so beautifully done. The 4K transfer here is incredible. This movie looks brand new. If you didn't tell me that this came out in whatever year, 1979, if you didn't tell me this is from 1979, I may have guessed that it was just an artistic choice. You can tell because of outfits and things like that it's obviously shot in the 70s. But man, the picture quality is so good on this. This is honestly one of the best 4K discs that I've ever seen. I've got almost 300 in my collection, and this instantly became a top 5 disc for me. This looks amazing. The HDR on this one, huge improvement for me over what I was seeing in previous Blu-ray screenshots. The color really pops on this one again, maybe because they had a little more to work with. The print was a little bit better. The original print they worked with was in better shape, but the restoration team at Blue Underground are geniuses, experts at this stuff based on what I've seen on these 2 releases. and they do such a nice job. So the HDR, huge selling point here. That added 4K resolution makes a massive difference, especially if viewing on a larger screen. We're talking 50, 60 inches plus, or a projector, 100, 120 inches. It looks incredible. It looks like you're watching a 35 millimeter print, and a pristine one. Just like Jaws, that's what we want. That's the experience we want in our homes with older movies. It should look like you took a brand new 35 millimeter print from 1979 and you pop that right into your projector and watch that at home. That's never been able to be done before, and we can finally start to do that a little more closely, almost exactly the same with 4K resolution. Now, the Atmos track on this is also a little more powerful than Maniac. I liked it a little bit better. The soundtrack, again, is a classic, so if you do have the previous release with the CD, maybe don't get rid of that. It's a classic soundtrack, but the Atmos sounds great. And you have many options for audio in this because this is an Italian movie. And so the interesting thing is, even the audio in this, it's not your setup. The dubbing is off. It's not 100% dubbed, even when they're speaking English. Because on these Italian movies, they would record in English, Italian, Spanish. They'd have multiple people on set speaking multiple languages, and then they would go back and do the dubbing later. And so it doesn't line up perfectly. Even the English speakers, when they speak English, because it's a recording, it's a dubbing, they're not perfectly lip synced, but it's not your display, it's not your setup, it's just the way the movie is. It's kind of a quirky thing that happens with these Italian foreign shot movies back in that time period. It happens with spaghetti westerns and other things as well. So on audio, you have the option. You can do English Atmos 5.1 HD or 1.0 HD. You can do Italian 7.1 HD or 1.0 HD, and you can also do French Dolby Digital. There's also English subtitles for the Italian audio. Now, I'm honestly not sure which would be more authentic. I watched it in English just because the dubbing's off anyway, even on the English. So if you're watching it in English and they dub over the Italian speakers with the English, you don't really notice after a while. But watching it in Italian, then you'd have the issue with Italian being dubbed over the English speakers. So like there isn't really a right way to watch this, but only the English has the Dolby Atmos. So that's where I would lean. I would go with that. But this is another classic cult movie. It was banned in many places. It was actually called Zombie 2 in Italy because the original Dawn of the Dead was called Zombie in Italy, and they did this as a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. They called it Zombie 2, even though this is the first movie. There was no Zombie 1. It was George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. So there's some really interesting history behind this that you can explore all through the Blu-ray special features, and this is a really interesting case in movie history, so I recommend those. But this transfer here, incredible. Packaging is it's pretty much the same as what we had before, and no digital copies on these either. So you just got the 2 discs, no digital. But again, $22, $23 for me, not having the previous Blu-ray release of this, it's an absolute no-brainer to pick this up. Again, like I said, top 5 all-time 4K disc for me. Blue Underground killed it. If you do have the previous, again, maybe sell it on eBay, find the soundtrack, buy that separately, sell your limited edition, and go buy this, because really, if you liked that previous Blu-ray, you're going to be absolutely blown away by the transfers here. They couldn't have done it any better. I mean, for such a small studio and a small group working on these, if you look at the credits, they had maybe 15 people they credit at the end with working on color grading and cleaning up the print and restoration. And it's absolutely incredible that a team kind of that tight and that small could create such a wonderful image from, again, which was certainly not a pristine 35 millimeter. This was, I don't think, a movie that was, taken care of in the same way that some other classics would have been. So they had a lot of work to do, and they absolutely killed it. So highly, highly recommend Zombie. If you don't already own it, it's a great horror movie. It's a great, it's a sequel, not really, to Dawn of the Dead. It's, they're not related, but it's a nice companion to that and to other zombie movies of that time period. And it's a great Italian horror movie by the amazing Lucio Fulci, who I just probably butchered his name, but he also did The House by the Cemetery and The New York Ripper, which are the next 2 4K releases from Blue Underground, which I also own on Blu-ray. So we'll be checking those out when I get them. So overall, just a really exciting video for me today. This is definitely in that cult horror genre. Movies aren't for everybody. They're both pretty violent. They're both pretty gory. There's a reason they were banned. But honestly, compared to what you see on TV every day nowadays, these movies they're nothing, right? This is old 70s gore, and you know, Tom Savini did effects on Maniac, so if you know him, he did an incredible job. And the effects and the gore on Zombie as well are awesome. And so, you know, both of these are just horror classics. If you love horror and you love these gory kind of horror movies, these are must-haves. And for me, it's right up my alley, and I'm so excited to add these to 4K. Blue Underground did an excellent job. They've established themselves right now. Until I see what Arrow Video has, and until I see what Scream Factory has, they're the best boutique 4K Blu-ray distributor out there, in my opinion. These are top notch, and so I'm really pumped to see the next couple. I will leave links to buy each of these down in the description. That supports Blue Underground by buying their movies, and also supports my channel if you use those links to Amazon, so I appreciate that. And check out all my other links, Instagram, other Amazon links, ways you can support the channel, and make sure you subscribe and turn your notifications. I appreciate you all. Stay safe out there. Be good to each other. Just be nice to people. There's a lot going on right now, but if we're just nice to each other and treat each other the way that we want to be treated, ultimately there won't be any problems. I know that's asking a lot, but you know, just be good to each other. With that being said, hope you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys very soon.